Next, Hitler's order denying Kohberger's request to suppress the DNA evidence in the case because of the genetic genealogy work used to identify Bryan Kohberger as a suspect. A male DNA profile was found on a K-bar knife sheath found next to Maddie Mogen's body. The crime lab named that DNA profile Q1.1. Hitler wrote, the Idaho State Police delivered Q1.1 to Othram on November 22, 2022. Othram developed a SNP profile from Q1.1 and searched family tree DNA in GEDmatch Pro. This work revealed 4 brothers of interest, all of whom were low matches to Q1.1. A footnote states these brothers did not share defendant's last name. So that was an interesting bit of information right there. Early in the investigation, Othram came up with 4 brothers determined to be low matches. Then the FBI got involved. And this is where Kohberger argued his rights were violated. Kohberger said the FBI ran the profile through MyHeritage and GEDmatch, 2 databases that do not allow law enforcement to access their databases. Only Family Tree DNA and GEDmatch Pro allow law enforcement access. Kohberger argued that agents accessing MyHeritage and GEDmatch violated a DOJ policy, but Hitler said the policy was simply guidance and didn't place any legal restrictions on law enforcement. Kohberger had also argued that law enforcement needed a warrant for the work.
Your Honor, our position is that the court should suppress the IgG identification and everything that flows from that. This is supported by 4th Amendment of the United States Constitution, due process, Article 1, Section 17 of the Idaho Constitution. Your Honor, there was no warrant for several phases of the search that led to the IgG work, investigative genetic genealogy. And we think every single one of those stages, a warrant was required. None was given. And so this must be suppressed.
Hitler disagreed, writing, the state denies that the testing of the DNA from the sheath was a search, pointing out the DNA was lawfully seized evidence from the scene of the crime. The state further contends defendant has not demonstrated he had a reasonable expectation of privacy in this DNA because he had abandoned it and or because he has not shown the existence of a reasonable privacy interest society is willing to recognize. Judge Hitler said he found no violation of Bryan Kohberger's 4th Amendment rights. I want to bring in Philip Dubé.
So very, very interesting. And we were talking about that before. Had Judge Hitler ruled any step of the way, this would have established new case law that would have been sort of new ground. And to say that, processing the DNA through different techniques is a search each time, that would have just blazed ground that simply isn't true. It's not a new search. Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, Billy, she's trying to talk about the search through the database like Ancestry.com and things like that. But the real crux of it is, did the police have a search warrant and properly take care of all the evidence at the crime scene? That they did, and she's not disputing that, but she's saying, because there are certain places that allow the police to search databases, fine. But for the places that don't allow the police to search without a search warrant, because there's an agreement in place that amounts to a constitutional violation. It's not a constitutional violation, as Hitler said, that the court is willing to recognize. All it is a dispute over or a contradiction or maybe not following policy. But that possible not following policy doesn't rise to the level of a 4th Amendment constitutional violation of any sort of privacy interest that Kohberger has. And so therefore, no, everything was done and it's done constitutionally, and it's going to come in as evidence at the trial. And that's that. If he had ruled any other way, he would have blown the whole idea of what we understand presently as a privacy right under the 4th Amendment. He would have blown it out of the water, he would have made it unlimited. And that is ridiculous.
Just for folks that it's the first time you've heard of Othram Labs, it's a high-tech lab that processes DNA. It's in Texas, and they've made some of the highest level identifications through, they're referring to it now as IgG. investigative genetic genealogy. And it's the Middlemans, the husband and wife team that run Othram Labs. And they've done some incredible work. And between them and the deaness of investigative genetic genealogy, C.C. Moore, they envision a day where there will no longer be serial killers, because they'll catch them so early on in the investigation, they won't get to be serial, which is an amazing thought. Serial rapists won't exist anymore if this technology and if the law catches up and does the right thing, so this technology is available to law enforcement to use, so that real bad people are caught early on in their criminal careers. And that is an amazing thought, that science is providing this really amazing technology to law enforcement. Mike.
Yeah, Billy, the IgG is an amazing thing, because it used to be 30 years ago, you'd need a lot of blood, a few drops of blood. And even though DNA can last a long time if left undisturbed, like on the knife sheath and things like that, back in the day, if you had that knife sheath, that would have had to have Kohberger's fingerprint, perfect, nicely made fingerprint, which would last a while, or his blood, which would last a while too. And so that's what you'd have nowadays, especially after 9/11 and all the advances they can make in terms of identifying the poor people who perished in the 9/11 attacks. All of those advancements in DNA science have led right now to IgG, investigative genetic genealogy, which is fantastic, because you could take a little speck, which is nothing more than a couple of skin cells that are barely visible at all, and use that and then make a genetic map of that person. And then you can go to a lab that has someone's other people's DNA on file, because they're looking for their ancestors and things like that. And you can make connections. Say this person may be a blood relative, and you could even determine the gender. So that's how the police, when they got the DNA from the garbage, they realized the DNA inside the Kohberger's garbage, part of some of that DNA came from a napkin that Kohberger's father. So when they got that match, then they got that and they matched it to Kohberger's DNA on the knife sheath. They said, there's a male relative here. So that was fantastic. And so that was really everything that they needed to make that arrest. So that is how powerful IgG is. It takes that concept of, we think of DNA from say 20 or 30 years ago, and it just turns it into the future. And as you say, there won't be those serial rapists anymore. There won't be those serial killers. They'll be caught much more quickly.
Absolutely. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. If you like real crime, true crime from a police perspective, you're in the right place. And if you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, hit the like button, share us with your friends and your family. And if you want to contribute to us financially, we have a Patreon with 4 different levels, and we also have a YouTube channel membership with 5 different levels. And you could contribute and help this show to be able to stay on the air and to prosper. But we appreciate all of our friends, our Police Off the Cuff family, and our subscribers very, very much. Ethan Chapin's family has stayed away from this case. And for the most part, he's the one. Ethan was a triplet, and he has a brother and a sister, and he was the third. And the family, if you hear the family or have seen the family, you can't help but see how they are a higher level of human being. At least they're higher level than me. I could not forgive and forget and try to move on with my life after something this horrible happened. I would be probably obsessed with it, and I would want to follow this case along the way. But the mom and the father, 2 very strong people, and I so admire what they're doing, even though I couldn't be like them, but I admire what they're doing. I want to play this, and this is the mom of Ethan Chapin. When she hears about this, the DNA and the decisions that the judge made.